Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the bill in front of us in some ways is a simple bill. It's a continuing resolution, goes for a certain amount of time. Sadly, it reflects the basic failure of this institution to focus on its job. We've had more than a year to deal with what we should be dealing with, the passage of the budget. We extended, I actually voted for the extension, the last continuing resolution to provide time. Now, my friends knew at the beginning of this process a number of things that they had to do. They knew if they took out the Hyde language and those protections that they would never get a deal. And yet they did that anyway. They did that without consultation. They did it in committee. They had the votes. They have every right to do it. They also knew at the end of the day they were going to have bipartisanship on appropriations bills. They will not pass in the Senate unless, because of the filibuster, there's sufficient support on both sides of the aisle. And every single Republican in this chamber actually supported the reinsertion of the Hyde Amendment in the legislative process, telling our friends, if you take this out, we're not going to be working with you until it's restored. So far, we haven't seen any effort to do that. My friends on the other side also, Mr. Speaker, put in lots of poison pills. Again, lots of things that they knew Republicans would not accept. That's fine in a reconciliation package. You really don't need our votes. That's not true in an appropriations bill. It's my understanding that both the ranking members in both chambers on the Appropriations Committee have said, look, we're not sitting down to negotiate until the Hyde protections are back in, which are historically partisan. They've been there 45 years. Most of my friends on the other side of the aisle have voted for them over and over and over again, whether they like them or not. And frankly, if you're going to have to get a partisan or a bipartisan deal, when you put partisan pills in, you're going to have to take them out at some point. Might as well do it at the beginning of the session. We also have had no engagement from either the administration or our friends on the other side about any spending limits whatsoever. What is our top line number? Nobody's been willing to sit down and talk about that. Quite frankly, that's a problem. And we probably ought to be looking at that, Mr. Speaker, as we've done in previous years, over multiple years going forward. We could always make adjustments if we're in crisis. We've done that before. But we've had a framework that we could operate under, and it's actually facilitated the appropriations. And I would recommend to my friends that might be something they want to talk about with both sides. But in the end, the deal here is not hard to see. The deal involves three simple things. Lots of details, lots of other things to be negotiated. First, defense spending is going to have to come up. That's not just Republicans telling you that. The Democratic-controlled House Armed Services Committee and the Democratic-controlled Senate Armed Services Committee both put in $25 billion more than in the president's base budget or in the bill that our friends passed out of committee but never brought to this floor because they don't have the votes to pass it. So that's one. Number two, my friends in the 12 bills that they passed through committee, the Appropriations Committee, and I commend them for that, raised domestic spending by 17 or 18%. That number is going to have to come down. We can talk about how much, we can talk about where, but it's way too much and it's way out of balance. And number three, and my friends were told this over and over and over again, if you take out the Hyde protections on life, there will be no Republican votes for your bill. Now, we can pass continuing resolution after continuing resolution. After all, that's Donald Trump's last negotiated budget, the budget you got when you had a Republican president, Republican Senate, and a Democratic House. And quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, many of my friends on my side of the aisle would prefer that. I would prefer a deal. I would prefer a more robust defense budget. I am willing to talk about some of my friends' domestic priorities, quite frankly, some of which I share and would support and have in the past. Mr. Speaker, I'm also, though, not prepared to yield on the Hyde Amendment, and my friends know that. So, again, we know what a deal is: more defense, less domestic spending, removal of poison pills, restoration of historic bipartisan protections in life. Do those things, then we can have a deal, I think, pretty quickly. Stay where you're at, and we will not have a deal, and we will be right back here in February doing another continuing resolution. The most basic responsibility of Congress is to fund the government. Unfortunately, we're no closer to a full-year spending deal that we truly need. My colleagues in the majority have wasted months focusing on other matters, notably a wildly expensive and unrealistic reconciliation spending package, rather than doing the hard and essential work of governing the nation. I urge my friends in the majority to rethink that course. Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to vote no on the previous question, no on the rule. I yield back the balance of my time.